G'day guys, back with the Circle. On my recent Nullificator video, I said to people, hey, if you've got ideas of what you want to see me talk about in the Heresy, let me know, and I'll try and record them. Well, the user Sky, don't have any other details, asked about Despoilers versus Assault Marines, uses of Assault Marines, that sort of thing in his question. Well, today, I will bring you, hopefully, some answers to that question. Now, before we get into it, the first thing that comes to mind is how your unit's getting there. How your unit's getting into melee combat. If they're on foot, like Despoilers, perhaps it's worth investing in a transport option. Assault Marines, they can deep strike, because they have jump packs. They can jump out the back of a Storm Eagle, they can use those sort of devices. But Despoilers have access to Rhinos, Land Raiders, Storm Eagles, Dreadclaws, regular drop pods. There's a wide variety of units that can transport Despoilers. So in the sheer transport game, Despoilers win. However, Despoilers, a unit of 20, with a transport will generally be, the sort of transport that will fit 20 will be something like a Spartan or a Charybdis. That's going to cost a lot more points than the squad is worth, to be honest. The Assault Squad will pretty much win on points here every time, for versatility purposes. That said, there are situations, such as the character Alexis Pollux, who gives the unit he joins Deep Strike. He could be joined to a unit of 20 Marines, and they could deep strike in. I wouldn't, but it's definitely an option. I'd say the mobility edge does go to the Assault Marine. Now, when it comes to each and every legion, I've tried to list the buffs, the bonuses for tactical squads and for assault squads. So let's start with the Dark Angels. The models that are armed with swords, when they're fighting a model with an equal weapon skill, they hit them on a 3+. Very minor buff, and the Dark Angels are renowned among the Heresy community for their terribly mediocre buffs. Well, Despoilers, Assault Marines are going to be armed with chainswords anyway, or combat blades, therefore they're always going to be getting that bonus. However, the amount of times you'll fight someone who's weapon skill 5 or 6, such as Custodes, for example, or even other legions, such as Space Wolves, get +1 weapon skill on the charge, as we'll cover. Well, all of a sudden, it's no help at all. So really, neither the Assault Marines or the Despoilers here really will get any points, because neither of which is better than the other, apart from that mobility edge. Alright, Emperor's Children. They get the Crusader special rule. They also get +1 initiative on the charge and must challenge. I'm kind of tempted to give the edge to the Assault Squad here, because the Assault Squad, their challenges are a lot more survivable because they can take combat shields. That said, however, you won't be using a combat shield with a Phoenix Spear. I believe this Phoenix Spear is a two-handed weapon. Can you use two-handed weapons with a combat shield? I don't know. I don't think you can. I think you may still use a pistol or close combat weapon with it. So, yeah, some survivability there, I suppose. That's about it, really. For the Iron Warriors, there's no shooting morale checks, and you get to reroll pinning tests for both units. Yeah, neither one is particularly great. They're good in the standard games, where you're using tactical marines to hold objectives, things like that. But of course, we're talking about melee units here. Units you're going to throw into the enemy and try and cut them up. They're not holding objectives for the purposes of this analysis. So, neither is superior, but I'd probably give the edge to the Despoilers, because if you give them close combat weapons and bolt guns, and pistols, they cost 12 points a model. which is a point cheaper than Assault Marines. They lose the mobility, but they gain firepower. They'll still have the ability to do Fury of the Legion, and you can use them for holding objectives. That's a bit of a win for them. Alright, the White Scars. Rerolling charge distances when they're near a the Cyberhawk. Straight away, pretty handy. That probably is a better bonus for the Assault Squads, because the Assault Squads, they will... I don't know if they get it, to be honest. I think the Cyberhawk's just for infantry, which... Yeah, I take it back. The Despoiler Squad will be better in that case, because they will get the re-rolling charge distance, whereas the Assault Squad will only get the re-rolling charges if they didn't use their jump packs to move, in which case they're not using their mobility to their advantage. So, a bit of a toss-up. Of course, the White Scars also get re-rolling 1s to wound on the charge. It's kind of handy. The Assault Squad will get Hammer of Wrath, so re-rolling 1s to wound on Hammer of Wrath, and on the charge itself, you may get a couple extra kills, but neither one is really renowned, I don't think. Alright, the Space Wolves. This is one of these stronger ones now. So, +1 weapon skill on the charge. Counterattack, you must sweep if you win your combat. You get +1 inches to your run and consolidate moves. I'd say that's pretty good for the Despoilers. On the Assault Marines, though, this is the first case we run into where the buff doesn't transfer to the jump troops. The jump troops do not get the +1 to the run and consolidate. That's kind of important, because that means there's actually a slight mobility edge to the Despoilers now in those particular fields. Now, are they great edges? No. Do they cancel out the jump packs? Probably not. But in either case, Space Wolves are strong melee fighters. Again, Dark Angels. If the Dark Angels charge, the Dark Angels have the slight edge if they're armed with swords. But the Space Wolves, if they charge, have a definite edge, and it doesn't matter what they're armed with, whether it's Power Fists, Thunder Hammers, you name it. Alright, Imperial Fists. +1 ballistic skill with all their bolter weapons. They must challenge in close combat. They're immune to pinning when they're in cover, fortifications, or barricades. Much like the Iron Warriors, I have to give the edge here to the Despoiler Squad, because of the fact they can take bolt guns, and full-on bolt guns with Fury of the Legion with +1 ballistic skill for being Imperial Fists. That's a better trade than better mobility. Alright, the Night Lords. One of the only clear-cut examples here of where the jump troops are just superior. So, if you outnumber your enemies with the Night Lords at any initiative step, as far as I know, you get +1 to hit and wound. Your fallback moves add +1 inch to help you get away, so more reliable if you flee. They get a 5+ cover save in turn 1, which means the fact that you're not in a transport, you don't have that extra survivability, isn't as bad, because the Assault Squad will have cover. However, you are subject to the Seeds of Descent special rule, which is when your independent characters die, you have to take a morale check or immediately fall back, is my rough memory of the rule. Again, I do a lot of this stuff off the top of my head. I just quickly note down the Legion rules. I don't get everything 100% right, so I do promise to make sure I check on that later. But yes, Assault Squads count as bulky models. 5 Assault Marines will outnumber 9 Tactical Marines. Simple. Outnumbering is the key to getting the bonuses. Therefore, being bulky troops, being larger troops in the case of Assault Marines, will work out better for you. And you only cost 3 points more than regular Despoiler Squads. So, yeah, Night Lords, really good unit. The Blood Angels, in close combat, get +1 to their to wound rolls, provided they can wound, and must sweeping advance if they win the combat. Again, clear-cut example of neither being better than the other. However, things, of course, like their rights of war will dramatically change this, but we're not looking at the rights of war right now, are we? That's its own topic. By the way, the answer is Assault Marines in the right of war. Alright, moving on. The Iron Hands. -1 to the strength of enemy ranged weapons when they're fired at you, but you must pass a leadership test in order to sweeping advance or run. You cannot voluntarily go to ground. There is one little thing I haven't put on there, and that's that Assault Marines are actually a restricted unit with the Iron Hands. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, you can take as many Despoiler squads as you like, but the Assault Marine squads cannot outnumber models with the infantry special rule in the army, which means you're going to very much struggle to play lists of Iron Hands which have a lot of jump troops. Is it a real negative? No, not really. Alright, World Eaters. Obviously, the strongest melee army, because that's their thing. Rerolling 1s on the charge. Strong. +1 weapon skill and challenges for characters. They have rage, so +2 attacks on the charge. They must sweep in advance towards enemies after they win a close combat. Enemies they can hurt, mind you. They cannot voluntarily go to ground, and the Exhortations of Butchery special rule is available to them, which is if a unit has an apothecary attached to them, then they can increase their abilities, we'll say. However, there's a 1 in 6 chance that each model that does so will die as a consequence of it. No armor saves or anything like that, you just roll a d6 and on a 1 that model's just removed from play. Even if they've got multiple wounds. Don't get a save, don't get a feel no pain, they're removed from the game. So, it's a thing now. In this specific example, again, neither is clear-cut because you can attach apothecaries to both units. They can both get Exhortations of Butchery. They have access to pretty much equal war gear. The only thing that might help is if you are going to go for challenges with your characters, having the ability to put combat shields, that sort of thing, onto the Assault Squad Sergeants is a handy thing. Alright. Let's go to Ultramarines. They get a reroll bonus versus previously targeted units in the shooting phase. So if a squad shoots at a Lamb Raider with a bolt pistol, they can legally do it, they can't hurt it, but it means all other units in the army that have the Legiones Astartes Ultramarine special rule that want to shoot that same vehicle, they'll get things like rerolling to hit, rerolling armor penetration. It's really good. A little bit bullshit, if we're honest. Like, if you can't hurt the target, then you shouldn't be really allowed to pull off that special rule, but whatever. They get reroll charges against engaged enemies. These enemies has to be tongue-tied. The enemies have to be tied up in combat with an Ultramarines unit which has the Legiones Astartes Ultramarine special rule. That's a tough one. It's not really going to come up very often. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's good. Assault Marines are probably not going to be the guys you're doing it with because you have better options. Same with the Despoilers. Like, we're talking Invictus Suzerain, the Ultramarines, Special Snowflake Jump Infantry, even Breaches with Power Swords are all better units for close combat with the Ultramarines, so, Regroup and Fear tests are an unmodified leadership of 10, which is great. Pretty much fearless. They also have the Rigid Chain special rule, which is very similar to the Seeds of Dissent with Night Lords, but if you lose your characters, you have to make leadership tests for every unit. If you fail, they're pinned. Death Guard. Their units are immune to fear. They auto-pass pinning checks. They reroll dangerous terrain tests. They get a Feel No Pain 4+ versus Poison and Fleshbane. However, they have a -1 to sweeping advance rolls. Due to the fact that they're not very mobile as a legion, I'd say assault squads are pretty good for them. over Despoilers, but neither is particularly great in close combat. I mean, you come against, say, World Eaters, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, even Dark Angels and White Scars, they're going to have a hard time. Alright, the Thousand Suns. This is an interesting one because of the cults. So you have the Signs Important special rule, which is, again, similar to Rigid Chain, where if you start losing HQs to Perils of the Warp, then the army starts having to take like mass pinning checks, losing the ability to run, that sort of thing. In which case, I'll give the slight edge to the Assault Squad. However, mitigating factor, what cult arcana do they take? You can have +1 to your run and sweep results, +1 invulnerable save, you can gain fear and adamantium will, you gain Hammer of Wrath. On jump troops, they get an additional Hammer of Wrath, or reroll 1s in the shooting phase if you didn't move, but that's with your rapid fire and heavy weapons. Well, out of all of those, +1 to run and sweep in theory sounds great. Because, like, oh, I beat this unit in close combat, now I'm going to run them down. The problem is, Marine on Marine combat usually devolves into a pillow fight. You really need to pick and choose the melee fights you get into very carefully, unless you're someone like World Eaters. I'd say an Assault Squad in the Thousand Suns with multiple combat shields running with the +1 to their invulnerable saves, so they'll get a 5-up invul save out of close combat, and a 4+ in close combat, is actually very strong. And so I'd have to give a definite edge to Assault Marines with the Thousand Suns if using the +1 to invulnerable saves cult. If. Alright, Sons of Horus. They get reroll 1s on reserve rolls, +1 attack if they're outnumbering at initiative 1, this attack takes place, so things like Power Fists won't get it. +1 ballistic skill if they're within 12 inches of the enemy models with the weapons these units will be armed with, such as pistols, bolt guns, etc. This is a clear-cut case again of the Assault Marines being better. Yep, they're going to outnumber more often thanks to being bulky. Reroll in reserves is great if they're deep striking. And the +1 ballistic skill at close distances will help out with their bolt pistols. They're the better choice. Alright, the Word Bearers. They roll 3d6 for their morale checks, discarding the highest roll. They must sweep after close combat, and they reroll sweeping advance rolls of a 1. Neither unit is particularly good at this, and frankly, having these sort of pathetic close combat buffs in a world where World Eaters exist is not great. Alright, these Salamanders, they're immune to fear. They reroll 1d6 on failed morale checks. So you roll 2 dice, so you roll a 10, 4 and a 6. You can reroll the 6 and pass. Or if you have a reason to not pass, maybe reroll the 4. Alright, yeah, Salamanders. All Flamers get +1 strength. Now that's hand flamers, and heavy flamers. That's it. No other super secret flamers you don't know about. However, Salamanders are at -1 inch to run, charge, and they do not add their initiative to pursuing sweeping advances, so combats they win. Well, the Assault Squad's better at sheer melee here. They're more reliable at getting into it, thanks to the negative penalties to running and charging. Having the jump packs is better. That said, they're not particularly great, because again, basically stock units in these legions, like Salamanders, Word Bearers, Death Guard, you're talking essentially stock troops going up against absolute butchers on the side of like World Eaters, Night Lords, Space Wolves. Yeah. Alright, Raven Guard. An interesting one because it's a totally different option based on whether they're infantry or jump troops. They get Infiltrate and Fleet. if they're Despoilers, and they get Furious Charge if they're an Assault Squad. That's a tough one. The ability to infiltrate with Raven Guard immediately makes the extra movement available to Assault Squads redundant, because you're going to end up closer to the enemy by infiltrating than they'll be able to jump to in the same amount of time, so that's better. But on the other hand, Furious Charge, Strength 5 attacks, is really strong on Assault Squads. What is the correct answer here? Well, I'd say the correct answer comes down to what are you playing in your force. If you're already got plenty of shooting, then perhaps you don't want to use Despoilers, you'd rather save a few points, go for the Assault Squad. But if you want Jack of all trades that can capture objectives, maybe you just deploy them as normal in the back lines, Despoiler Squads with bolt guns are a solid option. Again, they're not getting any particular bonus to charging, and with the Assault Marines, you do need to pull off the charges, which you're going to be running behind the rest of your army, so I'll be interested to see how good that really plays out. Of course, they do have access to Raven's Talons and a bit of survivability with shields. Not terrible with the Raven Guard, the Assault Squad. Even though it's sort of what they're known for is jump troops, it's not actually the best match for Raven Guard. There is a better match for all of these forces, in fact, and we'll get to them shortly. Lastly, the Alpha Legion. Thanks to mutable tactics, you get a choice of either Scout, Infiltrate, Tank Hunters, Counterattack, Move Through Cover, or Adamantium Will. And the caveat is Martial Hubris, which is basically if you lose more models than the other guy, you're going to cop a victory point penalty. So bringing a whole bunch of close combat troops to a fight, when they're probably going to be inferior to their enemy close combat troops, is going to put them in a rough spot. So, which is superior out of the two? I'd go with the Despoiler Squad, because it's much more Alpha Legion-y to have options. The ability to use bolt guns or bolt pistols is a good option. The fact also that you could take something like Counterattack means that the Despoiler Squad not getting off the charge, because they have less mobility than the Assault Squad, isn't such a huge deal, because they'll still get plenty of attacks. Now, if I was trying to choose the most viable for my points unit to try and pull off any of these particular abilities, the answer, of course, the correct answer, that is Space Marine bikes. Bikes are marginally more expensive than Assault Marines for what they bring to the table. They have better firepower. They have the firepower of 2 Tactical Marines built in. Essentially, they're a twin-linked bolt gun. It's a better weapon. It's a reliable bolt gun anyway. They move just as fast. They're less prone to take dangerous terrain checks because they're not jumping into the stuff constantly. They count as very bulky, which means getting the outnumbering, getting the rerolls on outnumbering with Sons of Horus, Night Lords, that sort of thing, much easier to apply. They still get close combat weapons. They still get bolt pistols. Outriders, basically, this is their forte. And certain legions like Dark Angels, White Scars, are better on bikes than they are on foot. So the correct answer as to what is the best melee choice is not Despoiler or Assault Marine, it's Marine Bike. Yeah, who saw that coming? Anyway, that answers the question. I'm glad you all tuned in for it, to find out that bikes were clearly the superior option from the guy that is currently playing White Scars, but they are. They move fast, they can do things like outflanking, they can do things like hit and run more easily. There's plenty of Rights of War out there. They're much better in Dark Angels Ravenwing armies than Despoilers or Assault Marines will ever be. The only thing that's harder to do is to put Apothecaries with them. But they're also Toughness 5, which is something neither of these guys have. They come with their own jinking cover saves. They can just take cover saves with them at the cost of slightly worse shooting. Oh no. They can still take things like melter bombs, like assault squads. They still got the firepower of something like a Despoiler squad. They're just better at everything. The only thing they don't do is score, and again, plenty of Rights of War that let them do that. There's also a couple of Warlord traits that let them do that. So, really, the only reason to take Despoilers or Assault Squads in the first place is because you want to do something fun and fluffy, like say you're playing World Eaters. In which case, well, it doesn't really matter who's better if you're doing it for the right reasons, which is because you want to play a specific unit. If you're doing it for that reason, who gives a shit what's the better or worse unit, as long as it's the unit you like. If you want to run a 20-man assault squad with chain axes in World Eaters, go for it, man. It doesn't really matter. You're doing what you want to do. It doesn't matter which is better. If I told you Despoilers are like 3% more efficient than assault squads in a World Eaters army, would that change your mind? I don't think it would. Because I've just told you that bikes are better, haven't I? Anyway, I don't know. I think for a lot of people, specialized units like assault squads that really do one thing well are never as easy to play as something like a Despoiler squad equipped with additional bolt guns, which can do a couple of jobs. I know it's counterintuitive to a lot of what I've said in the video, but it is handy having a unit you know can shoot people with bolt guns, but is also no slouch in close combat for a lot of these forces. It's some sort of reliability there, the fact that you can plant them on an objective and not be completely terrified of being charged by other Marines, it's helpful. Anyway, like with the outer circle, please, thoughts and feedback below. I will talk more about melee, about getting into it correctly, what transports to use, that sort of thing in later videos. But I think it's more important to understand the units and their functions first, and how they apply to each legion, or mechanicum, was it militia, whatever force I'm talking about at the time, how they function, before we get into the nitty-gritty of applying the rules to said units. This is a long, slow process, guys. Don't expect it to all be finished in the next month. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of units and a lot of foundations we've got to build, because I'm trying to teach people an entire game system here. And whilst I recognise that many of you already know the game system coming into this, it's no good me jumping ahead for you and leaving other people behind. So bear with me, and I'll do my best. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.